I'm Danielle Gilbo, and welcome to The Fearless Pursuit, where we highlight the importance of entrepreneurship and agency for young women. Our guest today is Cindy Villarreal, a former Dallas Cowboys cheerleader turned powerhouse producer. She's an entrepreneur, author, media executive, proud mother of 4, and now an AI tech founder. She's built an extraordinary career that spans professional cheerleading, business leadership, television production, and she's not stopping anytime soon. She is the founder of the Cheer Channel television network and the author of the book, The Cheerleader's Guide to Life, as well as a sought-after speaker who just recently shared her wisdom with students from Harvard University. Her journey is filled with lessons about discipline, resilience, and purpose, and she's passionate about helping young women chase their dreams without fear. Please enjoy our conversation with the inspirational and lovely Cindy Villarreal. Thank you for joining us, Cindy. I believe we first met at South by Southwest with Rob Steffens. How do you know Rob Steffens?
So I had just met Rob that day. Now we talk about every week, so that's great.
And you talk about your new production
Actually,
that you're creating?
A lot of things, because we're both coming out of Hollywood. My connection to Austin is that I was born and raised here. He loves it here. So, we know a lot of the same people. We certainly go into the same circles. So a lot of our interests are the same. So
how did you transition from working here at Scarborough to then wanting to be a cheerleader?
Well,
a professional cheerleader at that.
You're right. So, as a kid, you're just trying to, hold down a job while you're in school. Yeah. For me, I went to North Texas and I went to work at a bank. So being able to do that for a while part-time, and what I already knew when I was over at North Texas, that I wanted to be a cheerleader because a lot of the girls in my sorority, I was a Zeta, so a lot of the girls on my sorority were cheerleaders on campus, or they were ensemble leaders. So I started trying out for college cheerleader, but then I saw that the Cowboy cheerleaders were having tryouts at the same time, so I was kind of doing both. And then their finals were on the same day. So I had a problem because I definitely can make the college cheerleader, so maybe I should go that route. But my boyfriend at the time says, "Are you crazy? You gotta be a Cowboy cheerleader." So I tried out and I made it. And so I made it to finals, past finals into training camp. Now training camp lasts all summer, and and girls are getting cut on a weekly basis. So there was no way I was going to get cut. I was I'm going to learn these routines, even if I have to film them. And I brought my camera to practice.
Wow.
And I filmed the routines so that I could come back and know everything by memorization. Because I don't think I was as trained as a lot of the girls on the team, but I knew that if you were there, that was your shot. And I saw so many girls that would either show up late or come in not knowing their routine, or their hair wasn't perfect, their makeup wasn't right. And I was like, I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to do what it takes. And I was one of the very few girls that made the team their first time. Most of the girls who try out, it's like their third, fourth, or fifth time trying out.
Wow.
So I felt really, really blessed to be on that team. And I think it really was the beginning of my life. Certainly being a Cowboy cheerleader opened every door to my life after that in my career.
Yeah. And you have spoken about the discipline that it taught you and like the purpose you felt. Do you think that helped you later in life as well? Or was it just good to have a grounding in cheerleading and then you learned some other lessons later on?
Oh, absolutely. So, being a Cowboy cheerleader meant that we had to be camera ready at all times. So you had to look your best, and they didn't expect you to be that way. We were diamonds in the rough, and we knew that. And so, they gave us classes, Dale Carnegie classes. We had etiquette classes. We had image, public image courses. They gave us tests and current events and the game of football. So we had to learn these things. We had to be on our toes at all times, but they trained us. So they walked with us. So while we were training for the football field, we were also being trained in world events. We had to know what was going on in Iraq, or what was going on here in America, on American soil, and we had to be up on that. And so it was a very good experience in preparation for life, because all of a sudden you're a leader and you're an ambassador, and with that, it gave us the opportunity to be with all kinds of people from all walks of life, going into nursing homes, but also dancing on stage at a variety club telethon, where there's kids that are literally dying, and they will tell you their last wish and what their last wish is. And so it was just a great opportunity for us to give back and to see that we were just girls in a uniform that had the privilege of wearing it, but in reality, life was all about seizing what we had at that very moment.
That's very special.
And it has been. And
Yeah.
it has truly been special, because I think it prepared us for life. And I wrote a book on it after I left the squad, The Cheerleader's Guide to Life, because I feel like every opportunity that I had stemmed from being a cheerleader. I learned how to lead. I learned how to harness the things that I wanted by visualizing it and seeing it happen. I mean, that was how I was able to memorize my routines. I would literally visualize it in my head. And I remember reading Norman Vincent Peale and saying, you can if you think you can.
Yeah.
And a lot of Zig Ziglar books. And, there were a lot of verses in there, biblical verses that, that I leaned on. And so I really felt like, this is sort of clay, being molded. And I think that they were my mentors without knowing they were my mentors. Wow. Because at that point, I was really able to just sort of lean into that. And I also wanted to be that motivator. I wanted to be that cheerleader, and, through my book, cheering on other people. And I remember my publisher sending me a package of letters that they had received at the house at HarperCollins. And I thought, I can't believe that people took the time to write a letter to a publishing house. But they did. And one of them was from a guy who couldn't find a book on cycling. So he bought my cheerleading book, and he said that book motivated him to win races.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm so proud of that, because it made me feel good that, that I was helping somebody, and not even somebody in cheerleading.
And that kind of feels like it could have been the start of your entrepreneurial career, because that's kind of personal branding and making sure you're set up for success. How did that turn over into your businesses?
Absolutely. So, I feel like I was at the right place at the right time with the right people. I impressed the right people for that reason, because they did allow me to get into the NFL as a director. I think knowing people in the NFL that and having them say good words about me put me in with the right team. So I was able to direct for the Houston Oilers. I was able to advance and work for NFL International and NFL Europe, and that allowed me to really grow both inside, as well as, just continue to do what I loved, which was take it to the next level. Not just creating the choreography and the routine, but managing a business for the NFL, and then directing bowl games as well. So that was just a really exciting time. I was living the life.
So you loved being in that leadership position. Did you like it more than being a cheerleader? Like just being able to choreograph and direct?
Wow, that's a hard one, because I really loved being a cheerleader. I really did, because I could be somebody that was different. I felt like I was shy. And wearing that uniform, there is no shyness about wearing a two-piece, and I never wore a two-piece swimsuit.
Wow.
So I got to sort of be different. So I loved that part of, being able to go out and be with all kinds of folks. And but I think on the leadership side, it's sort of it's different, because now you're guiding young people that are your age, and I wasn't that much older than them. I was like 27, and they're like, some of these girls are like 23, 24, 25. So I wasn't that much older than them, but it was, a bit different, because I knew that I had to be a good example for them. And just an amazing opportunity to be able to mentor to other folks is just a real privilege.
And how do you think, if you don't mind me asking, your religion helped you, like, guide you through that process?
At the time, well, I've always been religious. I've always felt like God is the center of my universe. I think that everything I have, it comes, from the Father. But I think at the time, you can get lost in all of the pomp and ceremony and the being on camera, and you have to work really hard. You have to work really hard to stay grounded and humble. And I can't say that I was always grounded and humble. I don't know whether I was or I wasn't, but I think looking at it now and looking back, I probably would have used it a bit more. When I was a cheerleader, whenever I signed autographs, I would put Romans 8:28 underneath my signature.
That's lovely.
So it must have been as important then, but now I certainly have a very different picture, because I know that every second that we have is an opportunity to make a difference and impact others. And I want to do that as a child of God.
Could you tell us more about your European experience with, the NFL and living in London?
Oh, living in London was amazing, and I had the greatest experience. I got chosen, don't know why, but as the face of the NFL. So what was so crazy was to see my face on train stations or on billboards and newspapers and magazines. And I don't know what happened, but, all of a sudden I'm getting invited to the British American Chamber of Commerce, and I made their VIP. They sit me at a table, and there's the British chairman of British Rail on my right, the ambassador to, he's the ambassador to the UK, but he's, the United States ambassador to the UK.
Yeah.
And then I've got the chairman of British Rail and the Bank of England at the table.
Whoa.
And now the owner of Doc Martens is in and it's just, I'm thinking, what am I doing sitting at this table? And I'm the only woman, that's sitting at this table of men that are mostly in their, I don't know, they look like they were all in their 60s. And, but I remember thinking, wow, how did I get at this table? And they all think I'm great, and I don't know why. And, and so it was just, they were just so complimentary of the things that I was doing and bringing to London, which was cheerleading. And I remember putting something out that was so prophetic. I told my bosses at the NFL, I said, we're going to be a Glamour magazine. Lo and behold, 2 days later, I get the phone call from Glamour magazine, and we're in Glamour magazine.
No way.
And we've got this 4-page spread, and I really it just came out. I didn't know anybody. I had not talked about it, but I just said it. And it happened. But it was such a great experience. And that led to the next phase of my life, which was starting a sports marketing agency, because Richard Branson had contacted the NFL and had asked them who I was.
Wow.
And I didn't know who he was. That's the crazy thing. 'Cause I'm still young. I'm not into everything. But they said, he was the manager of Boy George and had some, Virgin Airways and, just some other stuff. And I said, oh, okay. And so they said, well, we think, we called him back. The president said he'd called him back and wanted to know why he was calling the office. And it was because he handpicks people to work with him. And he thought I was this rock star and could handle his branding for him.
Wow.
So I had the opportunity to start Proformance Sports Marketing and Entertainment and work with Richard and get to know him. And he had a rugby team. And so we worked on his rugby team, and then he did some other like car racing and balloon racing, a balloon trip, I think, around the world. And I got to work with him on a number of different things, which was exciting.
Oh my goodness. And how was that being in that field, which was probably male dominated at the time, as a woman? How did you handle that?
Well, that's very interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because when I worked in the NFL offices, there were no other executive females in the office. They were all secretaries. And so it was very different for me. Even the interns that we worked with, they all ended up now. Kevin Abrams is, or if he's still, I think he still is, the general manager for the New York Giants. So we were working with some, with a lot of men and not women. And so it was nice to be with girls and, other young women. But very interesting, because it was still not there yet. I remember transitioning into Hollywood. This was way later, after I had done, other television things. And the women in Hollywood were so cynical, and they said, you must have slept your way to the top.
Oh,
because
my goodness.
I'm sure a lot of them did that, but I never had to. And I made very clear to them, this never happened. And in fact, interestingly enough, I just was going through some boxes, and I found a letter that I had held on to from the NFL. There was a time when I was promoting my book, and I was on tour, and someone from Playboy magazine contacted me at the NFL office to see if I would be interested in being in their show and magazine.
Oh, my goodness.
Boy, were they calling the wrong gal. Southern Baptist girl. So, I was really nice, and I just said, no, I'm not interested in doing that. But then they asked if I knew anyone that would be interested. And I just wasn't interested in that and in recommending anyone. So I called the league office, and I let the league office know that they were calling around, and they might call other teams. And so I think it wasn't but half a day later on in the afternoon, they faxed this letter out to all the cheer directors that, this was not to be allowed. And I saved that letter, and I found the letter just the other day. I was like, this is so funny that I would hold on to that, because I think it was a moment when, if I really was after that glamour, which a lot of women posed in Playboy so that they could become famous and move into television. And that was the moment that I said no. And I was very proud of that.
That's a very big moment. And also it's quite inspiring to young women like myself and people listening, because you do hear about a lot of those stories, and it's very inspirational to meet people who did work their way to the top genuinely. And it shows that you can do that, and you don't need to resort to the other things, especially if you're religious like us, like, you believe that God always has your back, and he's going to get you through it if you're meant to do it.
Yeah, well, and I think being grounded, you're right, and being grounded, and, certainly reputation was everything. I remember there was one thing that Suzanne Mitchell, who was the director of the Dallas Cowboys, told us: it takes years to build a reputation, but it just takes one person and one moment to destroy it. And I was not going to be that person. I didn't want to be.
That's good.
And not to say that, maybe it would, but it would have tarnished the image, the wholesome image of the cheerleading squad. And it wasn't me. So regardless of whether it was me or not, it would have tarnished and it would have hurt a lot of people. And I never want to hurt anybody.
That's a very good point. I didn't even think about the fact that, you weren't just representing yourself. You're also representing the NFL and, the places you came from and also your family, I would say.
Yeah. And
you feel like your familial upbringing, like that is what gave you those values, or did you learn them through college or?
Yeah. So I had a very strict and, humble childhood. I didn't get to date much when I was young at all until I moved out and went to college. It just wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
And so we did go to church. We did go to church, but I started my ministry, my very, very first ministry, when I was 17 years old, and I was in high school. And so it was called Vikings for Christ, and I think it started with the four of us. There was a couple of students, myself, and the pastor, and we had it on Friday mornings. And that thing grew. By the time I was graduating, we had over 200 members. We had school teachers, kids, but we weren't meeting on campus. We were meeting across the street at the church, and people were going an hour early before school started for this service. So that was my very first ministry to start. I have another ministry that I am starting now, and it's sort of in the background, yes. This one is really geared to creators. So it's having been in Hollywood and working in the film and television industry, I know that it can be a scary place, one. Because school teaches you how to do things, right? They teach you how to write or how to do a podcast or how to film a show. But the real practical experience is what happens when you're there and you're in the lion's den and you're facing situations that maybe you don't agree with. And so the ministry is there to give them the tools and the support that they need to navigate through all of that, because there's so many folks in Hollywood who need that support, because we don't want them to get out of their places. We want everybody, if you're working for Disney or Hulu, whoever you're working for, we want you to stay in those positions. And because it's not that Hollywood needs. They need that. They need Christians, particularly, need to stay in those positions for a reason. Because if they leave, then it's gone. But it's also an opportunity for them to look for other places to be of service, where they can be of service and create content that resonates where they feel it's going to resonate the most. Because I think we're seeing right now some content that's just frankly not doing well at all.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing that with like Snow White, which is one of my favorite classics.
Yeah.
I love that story, but it's they bring in this political, diversity, and now they're losing money. And so this is what's happening. And then you see companies like Angel Studios, and these movies are doing phenomenal. So there's a reason for that. It's not resonating with the public.
What is your advice for young creators who do want to resonate with people, but they need help finding like a company that they could partner with, or like a niche that they could be in?
Well, that's one of the things that our ministry will work on, is it's going to help them find folks that they can work with and funding to work with. So that's one of the things that we're going to do, because, a lot of folks don't know where to go, or what do we do? It's, we can't sell this show because we have to add this to it, or they want us to do it this way, and we know it's going to change the whole wholesome feel of it because they say that's out. So we're trying to make sure that when we launch this ministry, which won't be too much longer, that it has has all of those things in place so that we can give them the tools that they need. And when you're in the career and actually in that space, because it's a tough jump.
Yeah.
It's not pretty. It's hard.
And what is it called?
Our ministry is called Into the Light Daily.
That's wonderful. I'm probably going to be going and bringing a bunch of my friends with me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like that's something very important that we don't hear a lot about. I've been in Hollywood and like the Broadway worlds, and there aren't many Christians or just religious individuals that I've met in general. I mean, there are a few, but they don't really talk about it. And also, like, politically, it's very one-sided, and it's very hard to find people that you feel like you could connect with and be lifelong friends with. And it's wonderful to know that there are places where you can meet like-minded people, and they are all looking out for each other and wanting to succeed, because, yeah, the industry is very polarizing.
So there's more than you would think, okay? You know, what we've noticed is in sports primarily, a lot of times you see the players after a win, and they say, I want to give God all the honor and glory, but camera cuts off and they're not going to let them finish. So there's a lot more than you would realize. And I think even in, in the feature film or television world and some of this, they have been cut off. And so now they're moving out of that. And that's one reason I have decided to launch my FAST channel, for that same reason, that I want to stay close to that wholesome, content that's family driven, that is impactful, that is inspirational, redemptive. It's not churchy. There's a place for that. It's just inspiring, motivational. It has a good story. And Disney's stories used to be that way. They used to make you feel good. So when you walked out of there, you said, wow, I can do that too. I can be that person. And I think that's what's missing now. When you look and you search through content, and it's dystopian, it's murderous, it's cheating on the wife, it's, divorce, it's killing, it's all these things that, it's all of these things that tend to be so dark. And, now you've got, being pregnant at 16 and, my college, whatever, Girls Gone Wild. And, it's a bit much when you're trying to, navigate your way and say, wow, that's not the genre that I'm in. That's really not what I want to do. And I think that is what's the, beauty of having a network that can create content that's around wholesome, stories. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create that space of wholesome stories where people can go and watch and be entertained, truly high quality programming that keeps them entertained and want to watch and want more. And because there's plenty of the other stuff. Yeah. And it's there and it's always going to be there, but there's not enough light that's shining through.
Okay. So you think there probably is a market for it, but do you think the market is overstated by the people creating those types of movies and TV shows? Like, do you think audiences aren't really needing that anymore?
I think it's, it definitely lies with the networks and studios. They're the ones buying it. They know what they want. They have a mandate that says, here's what we're looking for, and this is what we're going to buy. Yeah. So they're definitely doing that. Some are switching, and there's, it always evolves. But as a creator, what I would say is find out what's meaningful to you and see if anybody else is doing that. Is there a need for it? And you never want to create something where there's already too much of something. You want to create where it is new and fresh and it meets a need. Yeah. Okay. And then that really does begin to serve itself and grow from there.
Yeah. Okay. Because I've heard about two different methods that you could do this. We actually talked about this here for entrepreneurship at my university, but it's like you can either start with an idea and then find an audience and a market, or you could start with a need and then you're already like have the people, now you've got to create the product. So you're saying the latter is always more effective.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. When you feel that need, now you're giving them something that they want. But sometimes they don't know that they need something.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see something and you have this idea and you go, I know this is going to solve a need. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to create it. And so sometimes it's that. But I think that, if you do come up with an idea to do something, and I just had a pitch session this morning, okay? So, there's nothing worse than being pitched something over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, gosh, do you not realize this is saturated? The story you're telling is not original. Everybody's talking about it. There's tons of stuff out there. Just because there's tons of it out there doesn't make it something that everybody wants to watch.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I say no a lot.
Good.
But so I think that, you really, that doesn't mean go out and create something that nobody wants either.
Yeah.
It means figure out if there's a need for it.
Mm-hmm.
If there's, it's sort of fresh and new, then that's the direction that tends to do really well.
Yeah. And this pitch session, it was for TV, movies?
Both. Yeah.
Both? Wow.
So I had about 40 folks pitch every 10 minutes. So
Whoa.
I give them 6 minutes to pitch me. And then 2 minutes, we can ask questions, go back and forth. And then I get a 2-minute break to kind of write things, my notes down.
Student pitches or
no,
adults? Okay.
These are writers, producers, and some directors. And,
wow.
Some people who have a book and they're trying to get their book sold. So it's a little bit of everything.
Do you enjoy being able to give them that feedback, or are you kind of like, I wish they would, research the market themselves and figure it out?
Well, not everybody. Some of them come in really prepared, and they say, this is a story for the YA audience. It is a sci-fi dramatic comedy. It is character driven, and so they start to give you the bullets, so I don't have to pull it out of them and try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And then they share the story, and what's at stake, and what's driving them, and is it compelling, and they share little details about their world. And so, but you have to do all of that in a very short amount of time, and that requires practice. And so some of them, move off into tangents, and they start talking about, well, she did this, and then she got on the horse, but that's because she got on the horse. That's why she was able to ride over into town, and where she bought her cowboy hat, and then she did, so it's like, okay, what's the story?
Yeah.
And, so sometimes they get lost but that's part of the pitching process is what is the beginning, middle, and end of your story in about 5 sentences.
Great. Yeah.
And if you can tell somebody that, here's the premise, here's what it's about, here's the beginning, this happens, then this happens, and this is how it's resolved. And here's my audience, here's some comps of what it is. You can even start with saying this is a cross between this movie and this movie, and somebody instantly you'll get it, so because they tell you a couple different movies, and you're thinking, okay, and if you have a question you can ask, okay, so tell me how it's like Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
So so it's it is training for them too, to go through and pitch. They get better as they go.
That's great.
But you can kind of tell how well it's developed, depending on how they pitch. Because if they know quickly, that means it's pretty well developed.
Yeah, that's great. And also, I know when we met, you mentioned that you were going to go be an inspirational speaker for students at Harvard. Is that correct? And did that already happened?
No.
Or no, that's
on the 28th. I'll be speaking
Wow.
at Harvard. So it's sort of a mentorship pitch session. And this is it's an international business summit. And so basically I'll have about 15 to 18 students that will pitch me their entrepreneurial idea.
Wow.
And they're a Shark Tank kind of thing. And then I'll ask them questions, what's your TAM? Do you know what, the overall, market is? Who, how are you going to do this or that? So.
And you didn't go to Harvard, so how did this opportunity even arise?
Right place at the right time with the right people. And I think it's God moving all of those pieces into place, honestly, because I didn't go to Harvard. I don't have a Harvard education, but I've accomplished, a lot in my lifetime, which is just amazing. In and of itself, considering where I came from.
Yeah.
My parents didn't have any money to send me to school. I worked 3 jobs while I was in college.
Wow.
So I worked a part-time job in the evenings. I worked one on the weekends and one 2 days a week during, the day.
Wow.
So it was very, very tough for me just to get through school. So to go and speak to, people who go to Harvard, they generally, for the most part, are very privileged to in that situation. They, not all the time, but a lot of them are to be able to attend a school like that. So it's going to be interesting for me for sure. I'll look forward to circling back.
Yes, of course.
How that is.
I'd love to hear.
I don't think I'm not feeling intimidated at all. I'm going to be with my peers, and I'm excited about that.
Can we circle back really, really fast to your program that you're starting? Because we started talking about it out there, and it sounds wonderful. You said you can create, the goal is that you'll be able to create a movie or a game in 3 months from start to finish. Could you kind of explain that process?
Sure. So I have a fast, I have a fast network, and I'm getting ready to launch different channels. We are leveraging technology with our network. So we're going to leverage AI, blockchain, and name, image, and likeness. And so we also have a proprietary AI platform that allows us to sort of bring our ideas to life at a much faster speed. So we can plug in some ideas. It now will spit out an outline or treatment or marketing materials, whatever we want it to say it's a commercial. And from there, we'll get a finished product.
Wow.
Where we can now cast, and our app in that casting is done with avatar, so name, image, and likeness, where really these actors can they're with agencies, so they have to be represented, but and they can decide how they whether they want it to be domestic or international, whether they want to do just commercial, or they're open to television, film, and TV, all the different media.
Yeah.
And then if they don't want to appear in anything nude, or so they have a lot of say so. But the nice thing about the avatar is that you can film in the privacy of your own home. You don't have to go to the studio anymore, and there's the opportunity to make money on an ongoing basis. So we are leveraging blockchain for that. So the blockchain is a digital it is a digital transaction. It tokenizes all of it so that it keeps track of it. It's transparent. It can't be changed. So they know, oh, wow, I've appeared in 5 different things. I get paid for 5 things this past week, or whatever. So from the casting side, and then we have our finished product, and we literally can then start to move into the next phase of publishing, of whatever format we want to publish in.
Wow.
So that's exciting for us too.
And you're obviously very much embracing AI. Do you have any concerns about AI kind of overwriting some of the creative process so it doesn't feel as human?
No, because it needs a human touch. And what we will be doing is using it for automated purposes, to automate, so that we can, it's not going away. Know that it's not going to go away.
Exactly, yeah.
And so if we sit on the sidelines, it's going to go without us. But if we take charge of it, and then we can build it in such a way that it takes off some of the things that, that drag and drag and drag. Sometimes putting in all of your ideas, and then you got to go through another rough draft and another rough draft or another, and this really does work with the speed of light. It's fast. And so I think that the idea is to stay ahead of technology and use it towards our benefit, because we know it's not going away. So how do we use it? We're still going to need actors. We still need directors. You still need producers.
Okay.
But
yeah.
we may not need all of the staff in between.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you don't really need all the visual effects.
Yeah.
Folks, you don't need them. You don't need, all your colorists and all these folks, because that goes away with all the real worlds that are being built out.
Mm-hmm. And this is more a technical thing because I'm very interested in this field, but how would you shoot the backgrounds? Is that using Unreal Engine or Blender? And
Yes.
do you have an LED kind of studio for that?
We do.
Okay.
So we have an LED wall studio. We use Unreal Engine. So we can import anything from anywhere in the world. And you can, when you film it before the LED wall, and then you can import that footage, and, it really takes on a whole new life, because water that isn't really there is there, fire, rain, I mean, you name it. And, so it's really cost effective.
Yeah.
So it's not just time, the amount of time you save, which does take some of those costs, but it's also the cost of having all of the visual effects folks. So we're getting closer and closer to being able to do all of these amazing things, and it won't be too long at all.
Yeah. And so usually the actor is part of the benefit of the LED screen is that the actor's in front of it, so the lighting kind of bounces and can look more realistic.
You can still do that.
So how do you do it if they're filming at home? Do you just kind of key them in?
Yes.
Okay.
So once you have them on camera and you've taken a visual of them, okay, there's a process to that. Now when they're at home, say maybe it's somebody who's singing, okay, and they're at home, whatever they're moving or doing is what's going to be appearing on the avatar.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the avatar is them, but it also can be changed up. Maybe their hair is different, the eye color is different, what they're wearing is different, the background's different, so you can change it up a bit.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's really changing, but they're real people, so that's one. Now, can you still film and live action, still do all? Of course you can.
Yeah.
So, but the animation, a lot of the animation is now, it's certainly easier to do. Kids programming is going to be so much easier to do because of the process that's involved. So I think it's just if we look at it as a tool to help us, like we did with the computer, when we were everybody thought, oh, the computer, it's going to kill humanity, it's going to destroy all of us. And now look at where we are. And
exactly.
then the telephone, and then, so it's all of these things. And do I think eventually AI could be a bad thing? Yeah, I kind of do, because it's, how could you not? It's going to eliminate jobs. We know that. It's going to eliminate jobs. And there's, any product that you have, just like the web has the dark web and, some bad things, it could, be misused as well. So I think anything that we have can be misused. But we've got to try to use it the right way.
I agree.
Responsible way.
Yeah. And what is it called again? Your program.
Well, I have the Cheer channels, what we're getting ready to launch.
Okay.
The Above, our Above network is the name of our FAST channel.
So look out for that, everyone. That's going to be really cool. Can we talk about your transition from living in London and, being this big part of the NFL to then moving into Hollywood?
Okay. So I had a sports marketing agency, and I was working with a lot of professional sports teams and individuals. So Richard was one of them. And so when I moved stateside, we were working with a lot of players. We had a beautiful roster of NFL players at the time, and even coaches. And so it was around I don't know, 2008, when I had to come up with the idea to create a television network. And I knew it was innovative, because streaming wasn't really what it is today.
Yeah.
And that's what I was creating, was a live streaming television network with original programming. And we were creating little webisodes,
Wow.
which are now, short form. It's short form content. And so it after this, we started to distribute our content to other networks like, Film On, Verizon Go 90, it's just some others networks. And I started to create content for Viacom CBS. And that was really the turning point. Was we were creating cheer shows for other networks, and they were top shows on their platforms. They'd say cheer was number one for them. And so that was really the beginning of my working there. And then I really didn't get into the feature film side until about a year later. I started going to the American film market, and I realized, well, that's more of a buyer's market, but I'll make some connections. And I picked up a couple of films there. One of them is Marriages for the Birds. And it was written by Gary Marshall, the late Gary Marshall, who did Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and some of these other shows. And his wish when he wrote this screenplay was for his son to be the director of it. And but the script was on his bed when Gary passed away, and I took that script and we tried to get the funding around the project, but ultimately it needed a polish, a strong polish, because Gary went over it, but he didn't really, get to drill, polish it up. So we paid for a polish, and we polished the whole thing up. And then, COVID hit. So we haven't been able to pull it back out. And I think what we're doing now is, I think Gary would approve, is to change the ending of this story. Gary had the story ending with parents in divorce, something he'd never done before. He was trying to come up with something different that was more modern, more realistic. And so his idea was this family gets divorced, and everything is the same and okay after all. The children can live with both parents, and they can be happy. And so I think what we've decided is, you know what, we're going to go back to the original stuff that which is they get back together and have a nice happy ending that way. And so we're going to make some changes to the script before we get it out.
Yeah. Do you enjoy it? Like the pre-production writing phase?
It's a process.
Yeah.
I can't say that I enjoy it a lot. No. I like the final product when we're filming and it actually we see it come out. That's the exciting part for me. Is the editing bay.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's when you see all the magic come together.
I agree. I love that process myself. Can I ask? So you did all this with children. How did you manage both worlds?
Well, it hasn't been easy. I think having a partner, their dad, help was certainly a big thing for us. But, they're the best of my world. I got to say, I love having, I have 4 kids, but having, being a mom and trying to work, I mean, it is a balancing act, because you got to cook and you got to clean and, you're taking them to volleyball or baseball or, all of the things that they're interested in. And then you're still working. So the way I always do it is I get up early, a couple of hours early in the morning, so I can get my time in and get centered for me. And I do that before I ever start my day. And then I start reading the trades before I get into my day, before my phone calls begin. And so I'm caught up with the events of the day and what's hitting the news. And then I take my calls. And so I'm able to cut off work early. If I need to cut it off at 3, I've already put in a full day.
Wow.
If I need to cut off at 5, I'm putting in, some extra time. So it could just, being an entrepreneur, you're able to do that. And then I make sure that no matter what, and I mean no matter what, from 6 o'clock on, it's no more business. I mean, it better be an emergency, okay? that can't wait, because even at 8 o'clock, I don't take any calls after 8. I just give that time from 6 to 9:30. That goes to my kids. That's 3.5 hours. That's all they get in the evening, during the week. And then on the weekends, that's family time. That is time for me to get my things, myself, whether it's getting my hair and nails done, or a massage, or go to a museum because that's what I love to do, or if it's writing, or no matter what it is, it's Cindy time.
Yeah.
So I have one half day or a full day of Cindy time, and then the rest is for the family, and that's just the way I do it. And so my weekends are kind of off limits. Unless I'm working. If I am working, then I'll take another day somewhere else. But I always manage it and carve it out that way. And it's interesting because it is tough. My daughter, I'm a grandma, so my daughter has, she has a baby that's going to be 2, my grandchild, and she's struggling. And she's like, hey, I don't know how you do. I said, I had you guys on a schedule. Don't you remember? I got y'all up at 7. You had your routine. You had your breakfast early. And then I put you down for nap time at 10 o'clock. And you got to nap from 10 to 12. Yay! Because guess what? I could do whatever I wanted for 2 hours. I said, then you ate. And then I could tire you out for a couple of hours by going outside and playing in the playroom. And then you went back to nap time between 2 and 5 o'clock. You took that nap. Well, about 4:30, but you took a nap. And I said, you don't give your child any naps. You don't wear her out. Of course she's keeping you up all night. Of course she's not going to bed because you haven't established a nap. I said, if you can establish a routine, then you're going to get more work done for yourself, and you're going to feel sane. You're going to be able to read your book and feel like, oh, wow, I have all this time on my hands, but you're not creating the time to. And so I've always done that. I've always created. So when I had them when they were very young, I was able to carve out that time by putting them on a schedule. And then as they went to school, I was able to put myself on the schedule and, get off a little early because I got up earlier and got more work done. But no matter what, I made sure to always give that time in the evening to them, and my weekends to me, and whatever's left to them as well.
I will be keeping this in mind. I'm sure a lot of young women listening will as well. And I think entrepreneurship is so important for us because we do have to balance it with the family life, and that's something men just don't have the same. They have to be a part of the family, but it's different. You know what I mean?
Well, and men are a very important part. It's stressful, having to go out and work, and I don't discount a man for all the things that they do, because I feel like they work really hard to give us what we need and the support that we have, and I think it's just as important as the work I do, and because I don't think I could have done it without having that support.
Yeah. That's great. Is there anything else that you have planned for any new projects that we haven't discussed that you'd like to mention or advertise?
No, I don't think so.
Well, wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Your advice is really meaningful, and I think a lot of people will benefit from it.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Yes, of course.
If I can ever be of help to you, let me know. I'm happy to support you and your other students.
Thank you. Yes, and I'd love to hear how the Harvard thing goes as well.
Yay, I'll tell you.
Yay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.